You start a new job, you have a baby, you move, life happens. And all of a sudden you're asking again, who am I? What do I do? And you feel like a fraud when you're in a place that you felt confident.
I know how it feels to feel like you're fooling everybody, like you're too much and not enough, all at the same time. It's a lonely place to be, but I want you to know that you're not alone, that this mind game can stop, that there's no one like you or me, and that's where your power lives. That's what makes you genuinely great. That's what makes you the real deal. And this is The Real Deal with Bre Clark. Fashion. For many of us, our identity is tied to the clothes we wear just as much as our job title or religion. But for those suffering from imposter syndrome, the latest trends and the pressure to be stylish bring up some complicated feelings. To unmask those, I sat down with Heather Frierson, founder and CEO of Created Woman. It's a ministry leadership for women that uses fashion as an outward expression for who they were created to be. Heather, how long have we known each other?
I think about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. It feels longer.
It does.
I feel like I've known you for a very long time.
Well, we started off with a bang. You were very like, this is what we need to do and this is where we're going. Like, okay.
I ambushed you. That's what you mean. I ambushed you.
You did, but it was great. I loved it.
So, Heather, Created Woman is your nonprofit that you founded. How long ago was that when you founded it?
Oh my gosh. We just celebrated this past summer 12 years as an organization, an official nonprofit, 8 years.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. It's been a wild ride.
Yeah. What I love about Created Woman, I want you to tell me a little bit about it, but faith, fashion, and what's that last part?
Well, we say fun, and now we also say leadership, but faith and fashion for sure, which everybody goes, what?
Faith and fashion. Do those go together?
Let's go together. We think so. Yeah, we think so.
Because it's not random. You all have been very intentional about the nonprofit. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, we've been very intentional with it. It's really been cool to watch over the years how it's always been faith and fashion. It's never changed. And our vision for what we want to do with women have never changed. We've just always kind of navigated differently. But yeah, really, it's a lot of my story of why faith and fashion goes together. But we really talk about the whole woman. Once you understand who you are and whose you are, and where you're going and God's plan and purpose for you, the fashion part is really just understanding your value and your worth and showing up. And so we love fashion for sure and the trend and all of that stuff. But it's more about who are you and are you embracing who God created you to be? Yeah. Yeah.
So when you say whose you are, dive into that for me. Explain that.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's the creator, Jesus.
Okay.
You know, he's the creator of everything, and he created us. He knew you before, in your mother's womb. So when I say whose you are, that's where we came from. If I'm grounded in the fact that God created me, I am his, then nothing's going to be able to shake what other people say about me. I know whose I am, and I know where I'm going because he is guiding every step of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're actually in a season of kind of showing up and telling people more of your story and who you are. 12 years in, a Created Woman. Yeah. You're wearing the Shelby dress.
I am.
Which has been a big part. Tell us about the Shelby dress. I want to know.
This has been such a crazy journey. So just a little backstory. I have a degree in fashion and thought for sure that's what I was doing. And then totally went in a different direction. So this, I feel like even having my own line, it's really, like 30 years in the making.
Oh my gosh. You don't look like anything 30 years in the making.
Well, I'm only 30. So it was when I was a baby when I birthed the dream. But yeah, and so this started really coming to fruition about 4 years ago. And I knew that when we would do a clothing line, it'd be in support of the nonprofit, but it would be for the women we serve. And which is why it's named the Shelby. Shelby is really a woman who came through, Created Woman, is still actually with us. But her story captured me, as so do many stories. But she was the first to wear the sample dress. Oh, wow. And she walked the runway 3 years ago when we introduced them. Her life has been impacted by the ministry. And so it just felt right to call it the Shelby dress. And it's for sure my dream come true. Something I've always dreamed about, to have a clothing line and do work in the fashion industry, if you will, which, but now it's much bigger than just me having something. It really tells a story about the women that we've met, so many over the years, who are really looking for something more, and know that there's something more, just haven't figured that out maybe, or going to the next level even. So Shelby's one of those.
And you will really mentor women, helping them figure out not only whose they are, but who they are, in whatever part of life they are. I remember when I came to one of your Gather Her events, which you all put on every month, which is a big, huge like party for women where you can shop and mingle. And
you don't do anything unless it's fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. I had someone invite me to say, "Hey, do you want to go back and Gather Her?" And I was like, "What is that?" And I was a new mom and trying to figure out who I was in this space. I had lost a little bit of that determination of what I wanted to do, because my identity became this tiny person who uses me as a cafeteria, you know, because I nurse them, you know? And coming to your event, it was me kind of just feeling like, I don't know who I am, and they're going to know I don't know who I am, and feeling quite a bit like a fraud, which is what our show is about. It's just talking about those imposter feelings that we all feel at some time. And what I like most about Creative Woman is you all kind of dive deep past that and say, you need to know who you are, what your identity is grounded in, and what you plan to do with it. And you just do it in a fun way with adding fashion to it. How has it been over the years, seeing what women start in that space of, I feel like I'm not enough, I feel like I'm a fraud, I feel like everybody is going to know that I'm failing as a mother, as a wife, as a friend, as just a woman in general? How's it seeing women transform through what you all do?
What's interesting, because you see them transform and then they enter a new season and it starts all over again. We never arrive. And I think, you know, we talk about imposter syndrome, but I feel like that's where our faith comes in too. You know, for you, it was your baby. And for me, certainly that was a season when I had kids, but then there was a next level. And so when I see women transform and they step into this new season of understanding, it's like this. I say all the time, your purpose in life will never change, but your strategy will. It will constantly change. And it's because of, you start a new job, you have a baby, you move, life happens. And all of a sudden you're asking again, who am I? What do I do? And you feel like a fraud when you're in a place that you felt confident. And it's been interesting to watch. We call it a circle. You're going through and I think it happens every 6 years. That's just what I've seen. Like, I feel like as people in general, every year, depending on your circumstances. Yes, that's true. That's very true. But it's, when I see women come through, you see that light bulb of just, oh, that's right. Because you can get so comfortable in what you're doing. And then when it shifts, you almost look back and think, one, was I a fraud? Was I not doing the right thing? Well, you were, but you're so uncomfortable going into this new season. It's that dependent on your faith and on Jesus to relearn who you are. And I think that's what we've seen over and over again with women, that we grow as people. And you just go through that stage all the time.
Well, we talk about growth. With the imposter phenomenon, people say it usually starts in those years of college. And I think that goes in line a lot with what you're saying, because as women, we evolve, but in college is really that time when you're, you know, separated from your parents. You're faced with all these different people and personalities and religions and social backgrounds and ethnic backgrounds. And you're just like, oh my gosh, who am I? And you're trying to figure that out. And students are usually that big group that feel it first. And then it just kind of evolves from there. You feel it again as an entrepreneur. You feel it again as a creative. You feel it again as a mom or a new wife.
We see it a lot with empty nesters even.
Oh, wow.
Where you're just like, what do I do now? And so an empty nester can happen at 45 and it can happen at 65. And so it's interesting that it really does happen at every stage. But college, you're right. I feel like that's the first time we go, what am I doing?
We're all actually starting to see a lot more younger women at Creative Woman
Mm-hmm.
who are experiencing some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how it's been to kind of mentor them
Yeah.
through some of these imposter feelings.
You know, it's so different because of social media.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I say all the time, thank God there was no social media when I was in college. One, to capture all the things, but also that's a lot more pressure. You know, you can have imposter syndrome by the person across the hall or the desk or wherever you are at work, but then to scroll and see what you think is the standard, that just, I think, is soul eating. And so what we see a lot of is a lot of young women coming through feeling like they should have already made it.
Oh, wow.
And that they're not enough yet. And they're like 23 and 24.
Yeah.
And that is so hard to navigate. And especially you don't want to hear at that age, like, girl, you got so much time. But the reality is there's so much pressure at that age because they're seeing only the good parts and the successful parts and not the work that goes behind it. And so I think it's been a game changer from women in their 30s and their 40s to women in their 20s of what their expectation is.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to navigate when you're trying to really teach about who God is, who you are, that it's all a journey. But to tell someone at 23, girl, you're never going to arrive. It's ongoing. It's really not
encouraging.
It's not encouraging.
It's not.
But that's what it's been a different conversation for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because that's kind of how my story started.
Mm-hmm.
With a lot of women that are high achieving who are in these spaces that we're navigating, women are having more opportunities than they've ever had, despite kind of some of the things that are going on now. But women truly have a lot more opportunities that they did in 78 when the first study came
100%.
out. And so it's interesting to see. When I was 19, I had graduated from college at a very young age.
That is young.
Was entering, this space, and didn't see a lot of people around me who were willing to do the mentoring like a Creative Woman does to tell me it's going to be scary like this, and you push through it, and this is just going to be this ever-changing, happening thing where you're figuring out who you are, figuring out who you are in the season, but having something to anchor myself to. And I don't think I had something anchored. I was a lukewarm Christian. That's what I say.
As a lot of us are at 19.
Yes, but I didn't have any type of grounding. I was just kind of trying to figure it out. And I was very lucky that along the way, I had a lot of women, older women, who came into my life and said, honey,
so much time.
Calm down. It's going to be okay. Because I remember talking to them about these feelings that I was having, saying, oh my gosh, I'm just a baby. For me, it was age. It's always been age. They're going to see that I'm just a baby and I don't know what I'm doing.
I remember those feelings a lot.
Yeah. Tell me for you, coming up with fashion, I mean, because in the fashion world, I can see that being a big thing.
Oh, it's all about status and look.
Wow.
Which was so weird. I remember, because I had my faith too, and that's part of our story is I had everything separated. Career and faith over here, they didn't go together, which is part of the problem with the whole identity issue. But I remember I had always gotten leadership positions at a young age. And then on top of that, I always looked younger.
Yeah.
So I would go into these meetings with these strong women. I was a manager at a high-end retail store, and they were like seasoned and very strong because it's not a faith. I mean, if you don't work at a faith-based organization, like people just say and do what they want. I mean, they do anyway, but it was a different. It was very competitive, very, very competitive. And then here I was 24 and 25. Hi. Yeah. It was really difficult. And I remember even hearing my manager, who was 2 above me, say what she didn't know. I was listening. This just popped in my head. I can't believe I'm sharing this. Like almost laughing that she was giving me more responsibility because I was probably going to fail.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, number one, I didn't fail. So I was really happy. I beat all the numbers, but also it was just so much pressure. She should have mentored me. And even just going back to our faith, that word discipleship. and mentorship has been a lost art almost.
Mm-hmm.
And if we look at the generation before us and where we're going and the generation behind us, being able to say, I'm going to not only help you, I'm going to pick you up and I'm going to love you and I'm going to teach you, but I'm also going to let you fly in the midst.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a lost art because, what would have happened if you wouldn't have had that woman?
Mm-hmm.
Where would your identity been now if you would have just scrambled for the next 10 years? I mean, I'm sure the Lord would have brought somebody, but, it's really hard as a young person. And it was really hard for me to figure out, one, how do I keep who I am, not get lost? And I did get lost. I got totally lost in the ambition, the race. And that is fine if that's what you're called to, because I really believe, like you were saying, women have a better voice now.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally believe Christians should be in every marketplace. So if that's what you're called to, you have a grace on your life and to navigate. But I got lost and it was really hard. And so when that was stripped away and really my direction in life changed like that,
Mm-hmm.
I had a good 1.5 year crisis. I was walking in a fog of not knowing where I was going. I was always super confident growing up and in college. This is where I'm going. This is what I'm doing. And when that was ripped out, I had a huge identity crisis in the sense of I have no idea what I'm doing. I felt alone. My plans, like I felt like I had wasted time. It was 3 or 4 years ago that I was navigating this season of my life of, I think I just had my second child, of I had all these big dreams and visions of what I felt like I was supposed to be doing with my life. And just feeling like I'm so old. And I'm so old and I don't know if I can accomplish all of that, which one we're not supposed to accomplish on our own anyway.
Yeah.
So that was a lie.
So where do you feel like that pressure came from?
Yeah.
That you and old do not go together.
Thanks.
Listen, so I keep chuckling, and I'm not trying to laugh at you. I'm
young at heart.
It's this giggle of there's so much time. And we don't think that there's so much time. Yeah. We think, I have to do this in this amount of time. And if I don't do it, I failed.
Who said that?
Yeah.
This is
the imposter lie.
The imposter lie.
That's who said
it's totally it. And like, it's this whole New Year's resolution of January 1st, look back, you didn't accomplish all the things. Well, who said?
Yeah.
Who said you can't bring it into the new year?
Yeah. I want you to take me back to that moment when you overheard your boss saying, I gave her all this stuff and that she was gonna fail.
Yeah.
Did that moment resurface from time to time when you're thinking about things?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Like she didn't use those words, but she was giggling maliciously.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that just confirmed.
Oh, it confirmed.
The
100%.
Yeah.
For that specific instance, I really look back at it and say, I never want to be that to the generation behind me.
Wow.
I want to be the one that cheers you on and says, yes, this didn't work out, but here's what we learned from it.
Yeah.
So I think in that moment, it made me really mad. Like it didn't kill me. It made me so mad that I worked harder and I got it.
Yeah.
I did well. And she had to say it. But that shouldn't be my motivation, first of all.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that too.
Yeah. But I do look at that moment of what am I being as a leader to the team around me and to the younger generation that are 15, 20 years younger than me. Am I being the like, she'll fail?
Yeah.
Or am I like, hey, this is going to be hard and I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
I'm going to get through this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Valerie Young in her book and Lisa Orbe Austin in her book, they talk about this. They talk about mentorship in the corporate world.
Yeah.
And that's what I love so much about your story is because your story was not only this dream that you had, but you being pushed into this corporate environment and dealing with all of the things that bring up the imposter lie for many women who
keeping up the
were
status.
And the funny thing about it is it actually says more about our society than it does about us as women. There's been this talk about changing that idea from the imposter syndrome being on the person and us addressing it as a societal issue. Because you're in a society very competitive of this woman, who had probably been in your shoes at some point. Which they call the narcissist, that some of the imposters get tied with as they go on through this journey. And that just continues to feed and perpetuate the lie, because we're trying to prove the narcissist wrong. That how dare you think that I'm not good enough, that I can't do this. I'm not a fraud. I'm going to show you that I'm not a fraud. And as you continue, you keep making that bar higher, because once you prove them wrong once, that's not good enough. And if you fail at any point, all of your achievements before that don't matter. How have you mentored other women through Created Woman to help them bypass that voice?
Well, for me, it goes back to our faith and who God says you are. And like what they say you are is not who you are. And that in itself is a journey. And so mentoring young women and even women my age, like honestly, because it has no age limit, because I've seen women in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s that are still climbing that and chasing after exactly that and trying to measure up. But it really goes back to, God has created you on purpose and for a purpose. He knew you in your mother's womb. He has plans to prosper you and not to harm you. And so when we anchor, and it's really about diving deep into building that relationship with Jesus, and that's where I mentor from. Until you do that and that relationship becomes stable, only then will all the other voices start to fade in the background. Because that's only when you can ignore the social media comments. That's when you can ignore the chitter chatter. Or
I can't ignore those.
It's really hard. It's really hard. And you just kind of like go, because usually they're the ones that are the imposter. Honestly.
Yes. Yes, they are the ones who are the imposters.
They are.
Feeding the lie.
And then they're impostering on yours,
How dare you imposter on my imposter?
Get out.
There's been this mantra that your group has had for the longest time, and it resonated with me. Created on purpose, for a purpose, and knowing your why. What would you say your why is?
Oh my gosh. Well, that's big. But really the vision statement of Created Woman is my why. And it's really to equip and empower women to be who they are created to be. And that really something that resonated with me when I was single, to be honest. I didn't get married till I was 30. And when you're in ministry in your 20s, which I was, and you're single, well, your life won't begin until you get married and you marry the pastor.
Oh, wow.
Which I didn't, by the way. And I'm so glad I did.
We love Hoyt.
Yeah, we love Hoyt. And he's not in ministry. And I love it. We work well together, and we, have a great relationship. But that was the lie I was stuck in, was my life will begin when. And I've seen that over the years, over and over. And I remember sitting in a women's event, and there was this amazing woman who was given this awesome message, who I'd been following, who was single. And her whole message was, I will do this when. That kind of that sitting on the sidelines message. And I inserted when I get married. And it was like, oh my God, it was a revelation.
Wow. Because that would validate.
Oh
my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. So I remember saying, now while I am single, I will pursue.
Wow.
And I started reading Purpose Driven Life, which is an oldie but goodie. And I really resonated with that purpose. And that's where it came to life with me, was single. That I was waiting. I was sitting on the sidelines. I was doing the work that I was supposed to be doing, but I was waiting for the big thing when I got married.
Okay.
And over, we see that when I get married, when I have kids, when I don't have kids, or when I'm an empty nester, when I start this job, when I move, I'll do that when. And that's really how Created Woman started, is we wait, we serve others as women. We take care of our families, which is all what we're good and part, but it's not the only thing. And
it doesn't define.
It doesn't define, because God did not design us one-dimensional. Mm-hmm. We are so much more. Everybody is, not just women, men and women are so much more than one role. And we put on this one hat, whatever that hat is, career, mother, whatever. And we say, that's it. That's who I am. That's all I am. Well, one, you're putting your identity in a role. Yeah. And that will fail every single time. And we're not putting our identity. So when you were born on purpose, and part of that purpose is raising my kids right now. That is not a third, fourth, fifth item down the line, but it's equal to the other things that God has called me to. Yeah. And when you only pick up the things that God calls you to, that's your purpose. They will ebb and flow together. And I think we see so often the stress of women, of men too, but we're talking about creative women, I guess, of being burnt out. And it's really because we've picked up too much. You know, we have a specific purpose, which in itself seems overwhelming. But once we know what our purpose is, which is really to point people to Jesus, the how is through our gifts and talents. Once we merge that together and understand that, then life becomes a dance more than anything else, than a stressor. And that's really where you're talking about you were born on purpose and for a purpose. My purpose today is going to be different from tomorrow because of the different avenues. Yeah. At 3:00, my purpose will become my children.
At 3:00, yes.
Yeah.
Tell me, so we talked about the faith aspect. How does fashion, how does that connect?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, one, it makes it super fun because we're all a bunch of women. And so we're not going to please everybody. I get that. But we deal with 6 principles only, and it's dreams, because everybody has a dream, whether we meant it or not. Healing, sometimes we have to go through healing to get to the dreams. And then once you're healed, you understand your identity more. When you know your identity, you know your purpose. And then for us, it's health and fashion and taking care of yourself. If we are to run our race, as the Bible tells us, with endurance, we can only do that if we're healthy, right? We can cut our life short by not being the best version of ourselves. And then fashion, just showing up. I mean, can you imagine if you were here doing this interview as a reporter in your career and you showed up in, boxers or something?
Boxer briefs?
Boxer briefs or something? Briefs? Like, what is that about?
So this is the reason I asked this. Yeah. The reason I ask about the fashion aspect is because a lot of people might take that argument to the other end. Sure. It's like, well, how dare you talk about fashion and showing up as your best self? Like, the whole point is not being an imposter. Right. And I put on these clothes and I immediately feel like a poser. But you all are taking it from this other angle. Yeah. Of feeling comfortable in whatever. If your style is boxer briefs,
then do it.
Wear the boxer briefs.
That's right. Yeah. You might not get the client, but
no. You might get arrested.
Yeah, so we never talk about the trend per se. Yeah. We talk about, it's a reflection of who you are on the inside. And that's bottom line. You're not going to see me come in this little boho outfit, which I adore in other people. Yeah. That's not who God made me. Yeah. But if that's who you are and you're this creative artist, I love it. So it's more about embracing what's inside. And once you understand, because here's the thing, working retail for years, I saw a lot of women spend a lot of money on the outside and be super empty and with no depth on the inside. Yeah. Then I came into the church and saw women who were prayer warriors and just on fire for Jesus, knew the word and got it done within the church, but showed up looking tired. Yeah. And that was one extreme to the other. And it's marrying this. One, that's women picking up too much, right? That's the other side. But it's marrying like, this is who God created me.
And I'm going to show up.
I'm going to just show up.
Yeah. So it's wearing your identity so you don't lose your identity. Yeah. It's showing up as authentically as possible so that you don't have that moment where your brain goes, oh my gosh, I'm posing, I'm a fraud. Because if I showed up in, I don't know, this boho chic outfit, I would feel like a fraud. I'd be like, I'm trying to look young and cool and hip. No one says hip anymore. Yeah. Just take hip out.
I say
it. But yeah, I'm showing up and I'm trying to be this person that I'm not. But I love that what you're saying is putting that identity on and wearing it confidently.
And it's also being relevant to where you're called to. Yeah. You know, like if we're called into the marketplace, then that's where you go and that's how you show up. If you're called to feed the homeless and go into a place where you're caring for children, then show up and be available for that in a way that's appropriate.
Yeah.
So it really is about where you're going and what you're doing, because as Christians, and I come from that standpoint, we're supposed to be relevant and not put offish. So if we're showing up in a way that one is not trustworthy, when we talk about the marketplace or anything like that, then we've also lost our voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. What is something you'd like to leave us with?
Well, I think when it comes to imposter syndrome, I think more, it almost goes back to what I am passionate about the most. And it's just going back to whose you are and being who God created you to be. There's only one Bre. There's only one Heather. And if I'm trying to be somewhere else and someone else, then I'm going to leave so many people behind. So, and I know that can be cliche because we hear that a lot too in other places, but it really is. It's not be you, girl. You know, that whole like, be you.
Just be you. Yeah.
Just be you. Like, no, actually, you be you might not be the best version of you, but be who God says you are.
Yeah.
And then show up that way and continue the journey, because no matter what season of life you're in, it will change. Have your identity rooted in who you are and who God created you to be. You might fail from time to time, but you will be able to get back up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Heather, you are the real deal.
Oh,
thank you so much for coming on my show.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
It was great.